Hello there, welcome to my bedroom. Kitty Gaines is out of town today, so you guys get the pleasure of going to bed with me and hearing one of my crazy bedtime stories. Now, this bedtime story is going to be one of the greatest stories ever told because we're going to get into the scientific best rep range to build muscle mass fast. That was fast. So this is going to be very scientific. We're going to get into the different research studies, and you're going to walk away from this video knowing exactly what to do on your next workout with your rep ranges, and I guarantee you you're going to approach your workout much differently. It's going to be an epic video, and let's dive right into the first research study.
You ain't got no gains. You ain't lift no weights.
Quick recap. 3 ways our body builds muscle. Mechanical overload, basically lifting heavy, progressive overload, getting stronger. Number 2, metabolic stress, time under tension, basically that high rep pump shit that you hear all the CrossFitters talk about. And number 3, eccentric overload, going nice and slow on the way down, causing more muscle damage. I lied. Number 3 is muscle damage, which is caused from eccentric overload going slow on the negative portion of the rep. Now, if we actually reverse engineer what has to happen to achieve these, we're gonna lead to the conclusion of the best rep range for muscle growth. Now you have to understand, you're going to the gym to build muscle mass. You're not trying to be an NFL linebacker. Well, maybe some of you guys are. You're not trying to be an Olympic powerlifter. You're trying to build muscle mass because you want panty dropping aesthetics. I know that's why 99% of you guys are watching this channel. And the problem is, your rep ranges don't coincide with your goal. And when what you're doing every single day doesn't get you to your goal fast, you're wasting your time. Basically, you're going in the gym and your workouts are pointless. And I know 99.9% of you right now, your workouts are pointless because you don't have your repetition range dialed in. So let's get into the first study. Alright, so let's get into the first research study, and I'm gonna put this extra fancy graph on the screen right now. So, can high reps cause muscle growth? So if you look at right here, the protein synthesis indicator is basically how effective that rep range is for building muscle mass. Now remember when I said mechanical overload and metabolic stress are 2 of the 3 ways your body builds muscle mass? That perfectly coincides with this extra fancy chart right here. And okay, here we go. So 90% rep range will represent mechanical overload. Now if you're at 90% of your 1 rep max, I would say you're in the 4 to 6 repetition range. Now, very, very important. Do not go for like 1 rep max type lifting if you're trying to put on the most muscle mass. Hypertrophy, actually building muscle mass, is going to be more repetition range, but still going heavy and focusing on progressive overload. So according to this chart right here, 90% of your 1 rep max till failure causes the most muscle growth. Well, actually it's tied with 30% till failure, which we're going to get into in just a second. So that means if you're, say you have a max of 250 pounds, you take 250 times 0.9, that would mean your rep range, ideally for say the squat or the bench press, if you're at a 250 pound max, would be 225 for 4 to 6 reps. The main thing is you're going until failure and you're doing more than 3 repetitions with really good form. And track your workouts, write it down, and next time you do that lift heavier. So on the compound exercises, what's gonna elicit the most muscle growth is gonna be about 90% of your 1 rep max. So one very interesting research study shows that adding a burnout set after your set of 90% of your 1 rep max is gonna elicit more muscle growth than not doing the burnout set. So for instance, when people added a burnout set, 50% of their 1 rep max till failure. So for instance, like you're doing your 90% of 1 rep max training, and say that's 225 for 5 reps. Then what you're gonna do is you're gonna drop the weight 50% of your 1 max rep, so it's gonna be 125 pounds, and you're gonna be probably in the 15 to 20 rep range, and you're gonna go till absolute failure right after that heavy set. That's basically what we call a structured drop set for hypertrophy. fancy word, structured drop set for hypertrophy. So if you want to get the maximum out of your compound lifts, 90% of your 1 rep max for 4 to 6 reps, maybe 4 to 5 sets, and then do a burnout set on the very last set. Just do it once and go till absolute failure, 50% of your 1 rep max. Okay, remember metabolic stress is another way to build muscle. So let's take a look at this chart again. We have this fancy chart that shows 30%. Keep in mind, this is until absolute failure. This is gonna be extremely hard. You're gonna have a savage muscle pump. Must go until failure on this for it to work, because if you don't go till failure, only using 30% of your 1 rep max, it's very ineffective for muscle building. But when we're going 30% of our 1 rep max until absolute failure, the protein synthesis is very similar to going 90% of our 1 rep max, which I thought was really fascinating. That is why we must include metabolic stress as well as mechanical overload into all of our workouts. So we lift heavy at the start of our workout, and then towards the end of our workout, this is the perfect time to jump on the machines, to do shapers, like low cable fly if you're doing chest, or maybe like the preacher curl machine if you're doing biceps. And add in a few sets of every single muscle group in your training each week of 30%, 30% of your 1 rep max until failure. So this could be 20 to 30 rep range. It's gonna be maximum time under tension. And if you're also lifting with progressive overload over the course of the week and doing the compound lifts for that muscle group, and you include shapers at 30% of your 1 rep max until absolute failure, you do both those things for every single muscle group each week, you are going to make gains. This is literally the most scientific way to train to build muscle mass. But there's one more way to cap it off and get the complete muscle building workout program. Okay, so by the way, I almost forgot to say, don't do all of your sets either 4 to 6 rep range or 20 to 30 rep range. There are a few studies that also show that 8 to 12 repetitions are ideal for hypertrophy. So 8 to 12 reps, which should be maybe like 60 to 70% of your higher rep sets. And I believe you should have at least a couple sets where you go really high rep. With the really high rep stuff, you don't need to do more than like 3 sets per muscle group. It's a much different type of training, and you just need to do a couple sets of like 20 to 30 reps and you'll be good. So obviously, you don't want to lift heavy all workout, like in the 4 to 6 rep range. You don't want to lift light all workout. You want to combine these elements into each and every single one of your workout for the muscle groups. This is how bodybuilders train. This is how you're gonna get the optimal results. So I would say, me personally, 50% of my workout is lifting heavy, like 4 to 6 rep range stuff. 30% of my workout is 8 to 12 repetition range, because that is ideal for hypertrophy. And then the other, so I don't know, I forget the percentages that I just mentioned, but I would say about 20% of my workout is really high rep, 20 to 30 repetitions. Include all 3 elements into your workouts for the fastest muscle growth. And last but not least, remember muscle damage is the 3rd way that our body builds muscle mass. So what we can do with this means that we're going really slow and controlled on the way down of the repetition for a count of 3 seconds, okay? So you can do this with any exercise. It works really good with like arms and like compound training and stuff like that. So what you're gonna do is, I wrote down notes to try to figure this out. Okay, I would go about 60% of your 1 rep max on eccentric overload training in the 8 to 12 repetition range. This means every single rep of the 8 to 12 rep range, it's 60% of your 1 rep max. You're going to a count of 3 seconds on the way down. So if you're doing arms, you're going to a count of 3 seconds on the way down. If you're doing upper chest, on the incline bench, 3 seconds on the way down, explode up. So that's a really powerful way to build muscle mass. I say once per week, hit each muscle group for like 3 to 5 sets with the eccentric overload, aka the muscle damage component of training. So I know this video might have been a little confusing. I try to get a little bit scientific. 3 ways we build muscle mass. So there's 4 total different rep ranges I'm gonna summarize that I want you guys to include in your training every single week. No other YouTuber, nobody else is telling you this. This is the best scientific way to train. If you reverse engineer what like every great physique has done in their training and their weight room history, I guarantee you, this is what they're doing every single week in the weight room. Number one, at least half of your training, lift heavy with progressive overload, get stronger in the 4 to 6 repetition range on your compound lifts. Number two, focus on getting stronger on compound lifts in the 8 to 12 repetition range. This is going to combine elements of metabolic stress and mechanical tension. Number three, a small portion, maybe 15 to 20% of your training each week for each muscle group should be high rep range. 30% of your 1 rep max until failure, must be until failure. And then number four, we have muscle damage, aka eccentric overload. I would say 10 to 20% of your training. Focus on 60% of your 1 rep max, going down nice and slow for a count of 3 seconds on the way down. And you do all four of those things in your training with each muscle group every single week. You literally have to be an alien not to build muscle mass. In fact, if you are an alien, you might build more muscle mass. So that is it, guys. That is my video for today. By the way, gruesome injury that Gordon Hayward suffered. I was literally thinking about Gordon Hayward. It was so weird. I took a nap in the afternoon at like 5 o'clock and I was thinking, because I used to be a basketball player, so I was thinking, I was like, man, Gordon Hayward is like living the dream. Like, he was kind of under the radar. He was a good player in college. Now all of a sudden he got this $100 million contract. He was just ranked one of the top 15 basketball players on planet Earth by Bleacher Report. He's starting on a new team. They're a championship contender. And then a half a quarter in, he had the most gruesome leg injury that I've seen probably since Paul George and the guy from Louisville. Terrible injury. Sorry to end the video on such a morbid note, but make sure you guys subscribe and check out the video I'm gonna link in about 30 seconds on the end card if you haven't seen that yet. I will see you guys on the next video.
Halloween pre-sale. Can you handle the world's strongest, most maximum dose pre-workout? 40% off pre-sale. It will arrive on your doorstep along with the trick-or-treaters on Halloween night. Link in description. Grab it for 40% off while you can. Make sure you subscribe. Join the Superhuman family. We got videos 5 times per week helping you look sexy and get the body of your dreams. Wait, if you haven't seen my last 2 videos, make sure you check them out right here. Let me know what you think of it in the comments below, and I will see you on my next video tomorrow.